this stuff makes sense. You know, God, if you're really real, you need to show me you're real. And it was shortly after that that I met my first Israeli mentor, Dr. Danny Ben-Gigi. And he had gone to school with Loyas in Israel. And I got my first steps in Hebrew prayer and first steps in Hebrew, began to learn Hebrew. And then it was, actually Stan said this to me many years ago. He said, you were not just in the process of elimination, you were in the process of being illuminated. And I've never forgotten those words, Stan, because I thought about that and I thought, wow, that is true. And my journey just began to unfold. In '99, I went to a conference and came back going, how did I know some of those songs? How did my daughter, who was 12, know some of those songs? There was something that felt so familiar. And I came home and told my mom and dad, I think we're Jews. And nothing was said. They were just kind of like, like what? But my dad never said anything. It wasn't until 2004 that I opened Bat Zion Hebrew Learning Center. And that was a couple of years in the making in Ruidoso. And I knew, growing up Catholic in a community as small as Ruidoso, very Christian, very Catholic, this wasn't going to be popular. So I went to my parents and I said, I won't do this, because we were all self-employed. And I won't do this unless I have your blessing, because there's going to be some consequences probably with all this. And my dad not only gave me his blessing, he revealed the family secret. He said, I've known since I was 6 that I was a Jew, which my mom and I were like in total shock. I had a range of emotions, from disbelief, shock, relief, to just confusion, and asking him why, after all this time, I've been practicing Judaism on my own, not really knowing what to do. I didn't, you know, as I journeyed through, I'd learned, oh, we're supposed to light candles, but I did that with my grandmother, but I just didn't know it was a Jewish thing to do. So, longer story short, I met Stan, Rabbi Leon, Bennett Greenspan, and Seth Kunin in 2005, and then began to have the academic perspective of history. And as I was unearthing my own history and trying to figure out what was true, what was not true, you know, who wrote this Bible, who canonized it, all of that, I realized that there was more to this. In 2005, I did go through conversion, and then I had already started the Hebrew Learning Center. I started the Anasim Conference, and then I met Rabbi Leon, and we began to work together. We worked together for over a decade. And in 2011, I went to Israel twice. I went to organize a conference and a tour, an Anasim tour, and I was studying there. And along the way, trying to make all these connections, there was more and more being unraveled. It's like a ball of yarn that is tangled up, and you've got to try to get it untangled. And when we took the tour, we went to the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv, and I'd been there about 4 times before, but I had a knee injury, and I had to take the elevators. Me and another, he's a doctor, he was retired, he went with us, and he had knee problems. So we were both riding elevators everywhere we went. And we ran into a room that I'd been looking for there for a long time. And they have a curator there, and there's computers in there, and you can just type in your name, and boom. You know, I typed in Loya, and all of these Loyas popped up. I had already had hints of some of the places that the Loya families went, because Vanessa Paloma had sent me a name tag of a Yosef de Loya in Tangier, Morocco, when she was living in Morocco. And so I asked my mom, you know, did we have any Yosef de Loyas or Loyas in the family? And she was like, yes. But it was not anybody, they still are, as far as we know, in Mexico. So the family story is my dad's family. There were 3 Loya brothers that left Spain and ended up outside of Chihuahua or in the Chihuahua province and had a ranch there. And that's where my grandfather came from, and he immigrated in the early 1900s. And when I was in Israel, when we took the group, and I found like Loyas in Turkey, found them in Morocco, found them in Bulgaria, and they were rabbinic, they were rabbis. And then that same year, it was really interesting because Roger had just gotten back from Spain and he was going to be one of my speakers. Roger Martinez is a friend, colleague and a friend, and he said, I have a surprise for you. And when he did the keynote, what he did was he placed everybody like in little villages, and then he gave everybody names, and they were going to pretend to be the name of that person. And he gave me Rabbi Abraham de Loya's name in 1436. He was the rabbi of in Plasencia. And Roger's family had converted in the late 1300s, and then which were the Carvajals and the Davila family. And then my friend Bill Carvajal, his family was there. And here we were all 3 descendants of these people in El Paso, Texas, together, going, wow, we've always traveled together somehow. You know, here we are in another country, and our ancestors were together at that time. So it's like the unveiling of our story as we walk and journey in this life. And, you know, when we seek, we do find. And that's just kind of been how I've journeyed, is just looking, seeking, being curious, and wanting to know. So that's my story in a nutshell.
My name is Grace Bigford, and I was born in El Paso, Texas in 1955. I was born to Catalina Gonzalez and Alejandro Carvajal. I didn't know that he had Jewish roots. So And I attended Bell Elementary School, Zavala School, and Jefferson High School. At the end of my year in high school, my parents moved to East El Paso, and so I was supposed to go to Bel Air High School, but instead I moved in with my grandmother and went to Austin High School. My grandmother kept the Sabbath. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. She would gather rainwater to cleanse herself. And we would always go to services on Saturday with her. In 1994, me and my husband moved to Ruidoso, and I started going to a Baptist church. And in 2003, there was a revival, and there was a pastor. He had a shofar, and at the end of the revival, he blew it, and there was another shofar coming from the back, and it just opened my ears and my soul. And afterwards, I went to the gentleman and I said, "What is that, and where did you get it?" And he said, "It's a ram's horn, and I got it at Hosanna's." So I said, "Where is Hosanna's?" So he directed me to Hosanna's, and a week later, I was there, and they had a shofar on consignment, so I laid it away. A couple of weeks later, I went back, and I met Sonya Loya, who is the owner of Hosanna's and Bat Zion Learning Center. Well, she took me under her wings, and she invited me to her home, and we did Shabbat, and we learned the Aleph Bet there. We became students of Rabbi Leon, and in 2011, I converted. I am very happy with my journey, and I am very thankful to Sonya and Mom Loya for always including me in all the holidays and in everything they did.
My name is Álea García Ureste. I'm 50 years old. I come from Texas, from West Texas, and my story is somewhat similar to Grace's story and Sonia's, that you're looking for answers. I really wanted to know more about my identity. Something had been occurring in both my maternal and paternal line that was unexplainable, and I felt like it cut off the generations from information needed about our genealogy. My father died when I was a year old. My mother's father died 40 days before she was born. My mother's mother, my maternal grandmothers, both her parents died. She was very young. My father's mother also died when he was very young. And so there was so much information missing. And so when I was about 28 years old, as you grow and as you learn and as you see that things are not the way they should be, even though you know you're doing the best that you can, you begin to say, why? What's wrong? You begin to question, like what Sonya said. And that was about the time I began to question my foundation, all that I'd been brought up with as an observant Catholic. And I just couldn't understand, why life had been as tough as it had been if I had been an observant Catholic and a good girl. And it just didn't seem fair. And so I began to learn more about Christianity, and I went off on missions trips, and there was a Christian, this is where it began for me. There was a Christian that said, did you know that the Jews say what sounds like your name when they return to Israel? And that was the spark. That's when I said, I have to know more. What does that mean? And so for a few years I searched. I didn't understand a whole lot because I'd never heard the terms Sephardic. I just knew that my mother had said that my father's mother's family had come from the Holy Land. And they had migrated before the Second World War to the New World, and they settled in Mexico. And then I met, my current husband, remarried, and I was searching deeply for answers about our genealogy. I wanted to know, where did we come from? And I had been operating a historic motel, and there were exactly 22 rooms. And what I didn't know then was that there are 22 Hebrew letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And I had met someone in a neighboring little town in Alpine, Texas, who invited me to a Shabbaton, a learning center. And I read, there was no name on there, just the invitation and kind of like, somewhat like an itinerary, I believe. And what got my attention was the title, The 32 Gateways of God's Wisdom. And that struck me because I had been learning about the 22 Hebrew letters, and I added the 22 plus the 10 because we had 10 other doors at the hotel property, so that made exactly 32. And I thought, I need to meet whoever the person is that's organizing this Shabbaton. And that was Sonya Loya. And that was the first time that anyone explained so many of the mysteries that I couldn't figure out. And and introduced me to all these people like the renowned Dr. Stanley Hordes and many other scholars, that that they explained, because I had read one time, I don't remember in which section of the Torah, and I took it personally, what was written that you're a daughter of Abraham. And I thought, how could that be? I'm a Mexican American, I'm a Hispanic. That's all I knew, but how can I be Jewish, yet I felt like I'm Jewish? And I'm like, that's just probably wishful thinking. But Sonya's, all her connections, the people that she would introduce me to, they began to explain the mysteries of like this big puzzle, and all these puzzle pieces were coming together and fitting in place. And so she was a lifesaver, spiritually, to help me finally understand the Gateway. And that was the name of this historic lodge. It was called the Gateway. And I didn't understand that the Jewish way, that's what halacha means, the Jewish way. And she helped me on this journey to finally understand, okay, I had no proof of a Jewish past. She introduced me, as she talked earlier, about Bennett Greenspan, a Jewish genealogist who founded Family Tree DNA. And I did my own DNA, and it came back as Native American. Well, that I already knew. My mother looks very indigenous. Her grandmother was a Native American Comanche descendant. But these women knew how to kosher slaughter, from how Bennett Greenspan explained to me, because I was like, I thought I was Jewish. He said, wait. That's just on your mother's side. We have to find your father's side. Well, I don't have any brothers. I have an uncle who's alive, but I don't have any brothers. My father's gone. He said, just wait. Ask your mother all these questions. And he began to guide me. And so I asked my mom, simple questions. How'd you guys celebrate Christmas? Well, there were no Christmas trees, honey. We'd put up candles in the window, and one of the kids had to watch the candles, and we'd sing a song, but it wasn't in Latin. And I thought, oh my Lord, were they singing Ladino songs? And then I began to remember about, in school, we were made to forget the Spanish that I knew because of the racism, and I'm only 50, and I began to remember the 2 years I had to take Spanish to graduate high school. My teacher was constantly correcting me. No es mucho, es mucho. No es así, es así. No es pos, es pues. So I was saying phrases in the fragmented Ladino that I had, and my Spanish teacher would tell me the word así na is así, which means like that, and all these things that I couldn't really figure out, and that started coming back to me like, oh wow. Well, through the help of Rabbi Stephen Leon of El Paso, Texas, because Sonya put me in touch with him, and I decided, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to return. I don't have proof that I'm Jewish, but I want to take the obligation. I want to fulfill what I can, because this is me. This is what I resonate with. This makes sense to me. And so I made my conversion, and then later, to wrap this up because I've taken too long, later I did DNA testing. My father's only full-blooded brother came to see me in 2011. Man, I took advantage, and I said, Uncle, Tio, please do this for me. And he did the swab, and we sent it off, and lo and behold, I have an exact genetic match through my father's García line of a man by the name of Benjamin Jacobi, of blessed memory, who just passed this past March in Ashdod, Israel. And his wife was a British Jew who made Aliyah. Many years ago, they met and married, and she knew English so that when we Skyped, she could explain to me, Benny wants you to know that your ancestors were in ancient Persia. He's from Mashhad, Iran. And they were Jews by night and Muslims by day. And they left because of the anti-Semitism and went to Russia. They suffered through pogroms, of course the Holocaust. Those who survived, like Benny, I don't know if he's a Holocaust survivor, was a Holocaust survivor, but for sure some of his ancestors were. And that's how he's here today, when we Skyped on that initial, and that took a while, because they first tested me to make sure I was a legit person reaching out to them. They knew of a woman, a very good friend of Benny's wife, is an El Paso native. And so she came to see me first to make sure you're a real person and, you know, you really are legitimate in wanting to know information about the family history. And then another cousin came to see me, my father's only uncle, his son. So he let me take a swab. And even though on that side of the family that came from the Holy Land, it sounds like they were converted to Islam forcibly, because the great-grandfather was a Shia Muslim, but yet they had all of these crypto-Jewish customs that I uncovered as they began to tell me the family stories. Well, I swabbed that cousin, and we're on that line, the E1B1 haplotype, the very famous Jewish haplotype. And so it all came together, but I first chose to make a return to Kol Israel, and then later to discover the genealogy, because my heart really, really yearned to be part of the family of Kol Israel.
Good afternoon. My name is Petra Castro, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be speaking on behalf of our family into the Jewish statement. Anyway, the way it began for us, I had a grandson that was graduated from University of New Mexico, and he had gone on to Spain to teach English with a group of people. And after his tour of Spain teaching English, he had really grown to love the country and wanted to know how he could ever stay there. We kept in touch quite often to see, what it is we could do. And in the meantime, my neighbor Maria had come over and invited me to go to a group that was meeting at the church to see where we were in our family roots situation there. And we decided that we were discovering more, like you're all sharing. I have yet to prove that I could become a Jewish part of my heritage, because we were raised in a Catholicism for many, many years. So it got me so interested in, well, what more is there to life that we've only known from living and our history? And it happened to be that a cousin of mine is in the genealogy, and he had printed an article in the journal about his family, the Chavez, C-H-A-B-E-Z, which later became Chavez. And his mother and my father shared the same surname. So he got really elaborate in his article and everything, and in the meantime had provided our family with the family tree. There was no one else around with my father other than my brothers and myself, because mother had passed away and dad was blind, so he didn't know what the material was. And when I had gone over there and I was looking at it, I read the article and I says, oh, I didn't really know this about Aunt Jo, and boy, we're real closer than we really thought we were. So then he says, well, there was something else there. He wanted to say something about family, but I don't know what he meant. And he left this article, this thing for you. And I took it out, And I looked at it and I said, well, what's this? Turns out he had done the family tree. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I thought, oh boy, there's this and that. And I always thought, based on my maternal side, very strict, that maybe that we might have been from there, because my sister used to practice the different Jewish traditions only because that's what they wanted to do. Well, after we got this beautiful piece of paper and I started taking notes here and there and everything, and then get in touch with my grandson and him wanting to find, how can I remain here in Spain? I've just fallen in love with it and I really don't want to go back. And I thought, well, look at what we have here. So I had just started doing Ancestry maybe less than a couple of years. I was just getting into it and it was way too much, but little by little, finding out this, that, and everything. And I tried to follow my maternal side, who the cousin is from that side. And I got in touch with him and I said, how can we prove that we have Jewish in our family? He was adamant. That does not belong in our family. So I begged off and I went to find my own way to find this. So when we were getting together during the time with the church there and everything, then we had a representation from the Jewish, what was that?
Jewish Federation.
The Jewish Federation, thank you. And she was giving us information how to do the process and everything. So in doing that, it just opened up so much more that I was able to learn about more than just our past and everything, that we even have a crest and we have this and we have that. It opens up a whole new world to explore. It just made it so open. So my grandson and I were staying in touch and I told him, I think I found how we're going to be able to do this. And then in the meantime, another cousin, she does the books and everything, and we were at the museum, the Albuquerque Museum, and she was showing this book. And she says, oh, the origins of New Mexico families. So I go to open it, and I go to see. Oh. So I opened the book, and lo and behold, the first name that pops up, excuse me for taking so long here, I had a paper clip, but I lost it. The first name in the book is Avendaño. That is our connection. So after I was able to get just that little bit of information, it just opened up a flood waters of how I'm going to get this to you. So in doing that, I also had another book that I used, and it gave quite a bit of information to the ends of the earth. Finding this individual that was going to give us the part that we needed for him to be able to qualify for the dual citizenship. And in doing so, he took the part that he was able to do and start the process and look into it, because it was going to be for 2 years that they were going to allow, if you could prove your Jewish ancestry, you could become a dual citizen. In the meantime, while he was there, he had found his future wife. And it made it all the more urgent for him. So, like I say, having everything already printed out and all of this just to look through, put it all together, it was just like falling into place. It didn't even take any time at all. He finally says, I'm coming to Albuquerque. I'm going to take my letter and see how far that goes. It was just so easy for us because he knew what he needed. He had already processed what he could while he was in Spain, came through, did what he needed to do here, and then went back and followed up with what he needed to do, and then gave us the time that he would be back with his new wife. Well, in the meantime, his mother just got all carried away. She had some place to travel so she could see her son. And we went ahead and followed through with everything that we were doing for him. So when he went back, the papers that he had taken had qualified him, and he let me know that on April, he was going to get his visa to be able to travel as a dual citizen. 2 days later, he got his Spanish driver's license to prove that he was a national. He never did come back to Albuquerque, but to show his new wife off, which was over this last holiday. And we spent some wonderful times with him because it's not that easy to go to Spain from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Anyway, he also invited his in-laws because they had never left Spain before, and they lived on hold this again, sweetie. Sorry, I was so disorganized. I had it all in my head very well. But they live on the island of Menorca. That's where the family is from. Anyway, they took the time and the time to come to visit Manuel's family. And when they came, they could not believe how dry and desert looking. Well, they're out there in the middle of the Mediterranean, you know, and all those nice little places there for them. And then he comes, and the father is just excited to be able to see something so different. So he decides to take them down to Taos because they heard about the art colony and this and that. So on their way, we had a sudden snowstorm in Santa Fe. And one of the sisters, because there was 3 sisters that she had, and they came, the first time seeing snow in their lives, they stopped and made a snowball, and they wanted to know how they could keep it so they could take it back, and you know that won't work. But it was so exciting for him. And then right after that little trip that they took out to there, we got together because it was going to be time for them to leave. And the father comes up to me and he gives me a big old hug, and he tells me that we sent a prince because he was surrounded by just all the women, his 3 daughters and his wife, and to have Manuel there, he became a prince to him. So he was very, very happy about that for many, many reasons. And after doing all of that research for him and everything, he started to look into where exactly the family of this particular ancestor was from, and it came from the Ciudad Rodrigo, which is on the border of Portugal. We always thought we were from the northern part based on information that was given to us from the Christian side of the family that claimed no Jews were there. They were trying to put us all the way up there to become from the Moors. So, you know, it was really confusing, north and down to the south to go to Portugal. I mean, the west to Portugal. It didn't make any sense. So now that he's been there, we've gotten to learn more about who we are, where we came from, and how we get to know the people who we come from. And in finding the Avendaño, they came, the father's name was Samuel, and when they were expelled from Spain, they headed towards Portugal. And from there, the families, as you say, they got together and came in groups, and they ended up in northern parts of New Mexico. And it turned out that while I was a docent at the Museum of Natural History, I would have a woman come in. Every time they'd come into town to the museum, she'd come up to me and she'd whisper these Hebrew sayings to me and everything. We got to be friendly, not in a very close way, but I looked for her because it was interesting what she was repeating to me. And that's the first time I ever learned about the crypto-Jews. So now that we had an in for it, it has been such a challenge to go over the ancestor until we know we're all one in some way. So this has been an exciting thing for the family to know that we do have this ancestry. We have this history. You know, all the families have history, and wanting to find out more about the families that came to our country and how we came to be who we are from there. And it's very, very, very warming to be able to do that. So, and then in being here and sharing in today's, what we had with the previous speakers, it just opens up a new direction in life as what is our purpose. And our purpose is to let everyone know how easy it is to find where you belong and where you find yourself. Because so many Christians, Catholics, and all have a hard time in today's world finding the truth in what their belief is. And you can't get any closer than believing in who you are. And that's what I say.
Hello, guys. Some of you know me. My name is María Sánchez. And hi, Stan. Hi, Mrs. Hortis. Hi, Rabbi Min. Let's see, who else did I forget? Hi, everybody. I'm a member of Nahalat Shalom, although I'm a very bad member at times because don't come very often. But what I want to talk about real quick, I started doing research way back when in my 20s, and that's when I met Stan. Huh? Oh, right about here? Okay. And that, way back in the 80s, and that's when I met Stan. And Mama Loji, I started calling Mama Loji because she's like my triple cousin. And she is like a mom to me. She literally rescued my life. Me and Mama Loji started doing a documentary. Mind you, she bought the equipment for me. Back then it was those big cameras, so we started doing the documentary. And we filmed. Mama Loji and my grandmother were like two peas in a pod. They were really tight. And she would come over and they would talk, and Grandma, this documentary is going to talk about tronos. Grandma describes how they used to build tronos for the weddings. And when they would have the man come after the wedding, they would have a man come para echar la bendición. In other words, so we're having our separate wedding somewhere else after the Catholic wedding. We must have pissed off a lot of people, I think. Then we had, so this is what it's going to be showing, a lot of this stuff, a lot of presenting it like myself, excuse me, for myself, at least my generation, and because I was born late. My mother was 40 when she had me. And my grandmother was in her late 80s. when Mama Loji was talking with her and we were talking with her. So I grew up with a later generation. So I was very blessed to be able to get all this information and be able to grow up in it. Because I learned about, what is that called? Dieta. I think it's 41-day wait after the child is born. I learned about all the cleansing thing for the women. I learned about, my grandmother would tell the men when they were, how to do the kosher killing, and she would be directing everything. So all this is on tape. It's being worked on now. If you have an interest in it, please contact me. I'll leave a couple of cards up there. If you're willing to help out, just contact me. But otherwise, this is, we have, like for instance, for those of you who know, we used to have la cabecera de la cama, would be toward the east. And by the way, some of your Spanish is probably Portuguesa también, because I used to get in trouble for the same thing, except I got pissed and dropped my Spanish class and continued to speak my Spanish the way I wanted it. Because that's what I learned from Grandpa and Grandma and Mama Loji and my parents. I did not speak English first. That's my second language. What else can I say about the documentary? They had mikvah. They did have the mikvah, but they only had it like one time a year, but they had it in el Día de San Juan. And they would have it in a ditch right by my grandma's house. They would so the women would have cordons, and my great aunt would make the cordon, which is like a zit. In fact, I think I have 2 of them at the house, which I've hidden, and I hope I can find. So I've had all this stuff, and I have a ton of stuff I'm going to be taking photos of to put in the documentary as well, because I have all of Loji's stuff as well as my grandmother. And I must say, I still miss him like crazy. That was my life. Also saying that when I was born, that's what I was trying to say, when I was born, we did dual things. They would have the baptism, but they would also present the child. And then they had, I have a lot of crypto-Jewish prayers and the Ladino prayers coming from Mama Loji and her Siddur. I have that. I have my grandfather. Every evening he'd gather us together and we had to do the Sudadios and all the other stuff that we'd have to pray. And so I'm real well versed in Judaism, crypto-Judaism, and I made, what did I do? I had Sarah take, what was it called? Mandau. You know what a mandau is. Well, then she told me that's Portuguese. Well, it's like mandau. Okay, mandau. And then when she went to Israel, so mandau, I don't know if some of you are familiar with that. It's when you go someplace, and it comes from basically, I think if I remember correctly, it comes from a rabbi, and it's from Kabbalah, I think. You can correct me. This is so long ago, I've studied this stuff. And basically, you're supposed to take the mandau. It's a limosna. It's donation. Yeah, it's tzedakah. And basically, it's kind of like a blessing, safe journey, etc., etc. And I think I've worn out my time. So I'll leave my cards up there. If you guys want to help out, please, just contact me. Thank you, Hershel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Maria. We're looking forward to seeing the film about Loji Carrasco. And thank you, all of you, Petra, Álea, Grace, and Sonya. Thank you so much for having the courage to come and share. It's very, very important that we hear these stories and that you have the opportunity to tell them. And I hope that all of you will consider coming back to Nahalat Shalom. Know that your completely welcome here anytime, and I hope that we can stay in touch. Thank you so much. So, yeah. So, yes, Rabbi Min.
I just wanted to add a positive PS. Because of the courage of all of you, other people are claiming their heritage and coming out of the woodworks. And the most recent and probably most moving is a woman who contacted me and said, I know that I have Jewish heritage on my father's side and on my mother's side, and I'm pregnant, and I want my child to be born Jewish. Can you help? She did her mikveh a week and a half before the baby was born. And so now we have a member of Nahalat Shalom, we hope, who is Paloma. She has a Hebrew name too. Paloma Zahava Baka. And we're going to have a baby naming for her in this sanctuary as soon as the family can get it together. And we'll place the baby on the Torah here and bring her into the next generation of this story.
Okay, so we have an autobiography writing workshop next, and I hope you all can stay for that. Denise Leon and Hector Contreras are going to guide us through a writing exercise.